Stephen A. Smith joining us now to break this one down. So Trae Young starting this one slow but finishes strong. His ability to rise to the occasion throughout this series was so impressive, Stephen A. What'd you like most about his game?
Well, what I like most is the fact that when it's time to close, he's able to close. He was shooting 4-22 from the field in the game before he basically pulled up from the logo and drilled that pivotal three that pretty much sealed the deal for them. But clearly that wasn't the story of this game. I mean, Trae Young is special, and we all know that. That was not the story of this game. There's very, very many storylines with the Philadelphia 76ers. Joel Embiid turning the ball over. Joel Embiid shooting threes instead of going to the hole, trying to make passes he shouldn't be making. Ben Simmons, an atrocity on the offensive side of the ball. 34.2% free throw shooting for the series. It's the worst by any player in NBA postseason history. And then, of course, the great Doc Rivers. He's a champion. He went to 2 NBA finals. We all know that. But on the weekend that Ty Lue took his former team, the Los Angeles Clippers, to the Western Conference Finals for the first time in their franchise history, Doc Rivers, who coached the Los Angeles Clippers for 7 years and failed to do that, ended up losing yet another series that a lot of people feel his team should have won. And when you consider the fact that the Philadelphia 76ers over the last 2 years have won more than 80% of their home games, to lose games 1, 5, and 7 at home in this series is definitely a bad thing.
So with that being said, are you still trusting the process in Philadelphia?
Oh, no. I'm not the dude for that. I never trusted the process. I never liked the process. As far as I'm concerned, the process was idiotic, and it was robbing the average fan of decent competition. This franchise was losing on purpose for years and stealing money from the citizens of Philadelphia. The bottom line is Joel Embiid is the real deal, but Ben Simmons, I'm sorry, I hate to say this because he's an ultra talent. He's a jump shot away from being LeBron James as far as I'm concerned, but he has no shot, no confidence whatsoever. He's only great on offense when he's going downhill. You got to trade him. You got to trade Ben Simmons. It's really, really that simple. Him and Joel Embiid, that experiment is over. We've seen enough. Ben Simmons has to be moved.
Daryl Morey's got some work to do. Thank you, Stephen A.
Stephen A. Smith back with us here on SportsCenter. Stephen A., where do you point the finger when you look at all the issues from yesterday's collapse by the Sixers?
Well, certainly you got to look at Doc Rivers because Nate McMillan is doing an outstanding job, and that's Doc Rivers' adversary, and he's overcome back-to-back double-digit deficits, which is something that's happened to Doc Rivers about 15 times in the last 11 years. So you got to pay attention to that. But in terms of the bulk of the culpability, I put it squarely on the shoulders of Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris. You're Tobias Harris. You're getting paid $180 million. Jimmy Butler walked out the door, went to Miami. You were supposed to be that dude. 2 for 11 shooting, not a single field goal in the entire second half. Last time I checked, you about 6'8". You got a handle, you got a jump shot, you got an NBA body, you got some strength, you can get to the hole, you can get to the free throw line. Tobias Harris has been to the free throw line 9 times in 5 games. Now, somebody explain to me what type of excuse can that be? This is ridiculous. And then we get to Ben Simmons. Listen, I had this conversation with Doc Rivers at the beginning of the season. I'll say it again. I said it to him. I said it to everybody who would listen. Ben Simmons can't shoot, and as a result, that's why the Philadelphia 76ers ain't going to win the title. Because when your primary ball handling decision maker is not a threat to shoot the ball beyond 5 feet, that is a problem. And then when you take into account the free throw shooting, Ben Simmons has missed 26 of 39 free throws. That's 12 for 39 shooting from the free throw line. He's missed more free throws than the entire Atlanta Hawks squad. It's just embarrassing. It's pathetic. It's inexcusable. And it makes you wonder what the hell these people are doing in their offseason. My God. What could you possibly say to explain that away, shooting 41% from the free throw line? That's worse than Shaq used to do. Worse than Wilt Chamberlain used to do. There's no excuse whatsoever. But that's what's going on with the Philadelphia 76ers right now. And I'm looking at Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris because guess what? If we're not talking about them in that light, then the Philadelphia 76ers ain't losing this series, period. But if you get to talk about them in that light, they're going home. And we will never forget. I mean, never forget what happened in Game 5.
No, we will not. It will sting for a long time, considering the way things are going and the way we saw Joel Embiid step up. And speaking of stepping up, let's go to a guy who had to step up last night because the Utah Jazz, the 1 seed in the West, now down 3 games to 2. Yeah. No Kawhi Leonard for the Clippers. It's Paul George. It is the real playoff P. What are you seeing from him and what he's done these last 3 wins?
It's been spectacular. Over the last 3 games, he scored 31, 31, and 37 respectively. Last night was an incredible performance on his part, considering the fact that he was absent. Kawhi Leonard and the pressure of the world mounting on him and the organization. This is a franchise that has never been to the conference finals. Nobody believed they would win a Game 7 in Utah, pretty much. Not if Donovan Mitchell is healthy. That made Game 5 significantly more pivotal because that way, if you win Game 6, the series is over, and that's at the Staples Center tomorrow night, where I will be, by the way. In the end, what it comes down to is that Paul George reminded you of the kind of things he was doing in Indiana. He was taking the ball to the basket. He was using his strength, his size to take advantage of smaller individuals. Even some of the bigger dudes, he was using his quickness and his speed to get to the rack and to do damage there. He wasn't settling for anything. He wasn't playing soft. He was going for it. And so the guy that they call Pandemic P turned into Playoff P and really, really reminded us of what the hell he's capable of. And as a result, not only can you now not imagine the Los Angeles Clippers losing this series, because you can expect them to win tomorrow night based on what we saw last night, but not only that, then you've got the Western Conference Finals, assuming Kawhi could come back. You could possibly be looking at the Clippers going to the finals. And with the health it being an issue in Brooklyn and Philadelphia, of course, and Milwaukee struggling to shoot from the free throw line, and so other stars like Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton not expecting much from them, the Clippers actually could win the championship if Kawhi could find himself coming back healthy and Paul George continues to play this way. That's how significant his performance was.
What a ridiculous turnaround.
Stephen A., do you agree or disagree with Doc Rivers on Ben Simmons?
Well, I agree with Doc Rivers if you're talking about benching Ben Simmons. Then you're right. You don't know basketball. You don't bench a Ben Simmons. But where I disagree with Doc Rivers, and we've been on this show, I've interviewed him, I've known Doc Rivers, love him to death, the whole bit. He doesn't embrace the level of importance about Ben Simmons shooting as I do. I believe that Ben Simmons is a jump shot away from being LeBron James. That's how great I think Ben Simmons can be. His only impediment is his inability to shoot the basketball. But as I told Doc Rivers to his face, as I told Doc Rivers in interviews, as I'll tell Doc Rivers on these cameras right now, to minimize the importance of that, no, we're not flowing with that. Ben Simmons is the reason why when Max started off the season and you were talking about Philly, I like, nah. Ben Simmons, to me, is going to cost the Philadelphia 76ers a title. All because he has no shooting ability. And if you're a guy, you're the Shaquille O'Neals of the world or others, where you require participation, where somebody's giving you the basketball, okay, that's a bit different. When you are the primary ball handler, when you run the offense, when you're the point guard, and you are no threat from the perimeter at all, to the point where you don't even attempt shots from the perimeter, that's a problem. And I'll close by saying this, Max, because he's shooting 61% from the free throw line. Okay, he doesn't shoot perimeter shots. He doesn't shoot threes, and he's shooting 61% from the free throw line during the regular season and 25% in the playoffs from the free throw line. There was a game against Portland this year, and I really, really wish I could. I really wish I had that clip. I didn't call for it. That's my bad. Carmelo Anthony is guarding Ben Simmons when Ben Simmons comes past half court, and it was like he had a brain fart, and he said, "Oh, what the hell am I doing?" and sprinted back all the way into the paint because he knew Ben Simmons would not even attempt a jump shot. You can't do that and beat these Brooklyn Nets.
There's a difference between not being able to shoot like Rondo back in the day or Giannis now and having like a comically bad, like completely unable to score from more than like 6 feet from the basket. That's Ben Simmons. That might stop you from winning a championship if he's the best player on your team or even maybe the second best player on your team. But you can win with Ben Simmons. You can get by this series without Embiid.
Sure.
The question is, do they, like, you can build a powerhouse team around Ben Simmons, play 5 out or 4 out, like with Simmons either in the dunker spot or Simmons at point guard, right? If he's at point guard, it's 5 out because he's coming into the paint. You're either going to have to double him, someone's open, he's going to find the open man. That's why he has the most assists on 3-pointers since he entered the league. Ben Simmons. Or if you don't think he's gonna yam it. I mean, he's gonna get to the rim and he's gonna dunk it, right? So you can build a team around Ben Simmons like that, but that's not how they've built this team. That's not how they've been practicing with this team. But the question is, if they can get by the Wizards, especially up 3-1 without Embiid, yes, they can. And I believe they will, even without Embiid. Even with Doc Rivers' record of, up 3-1 and then not only not being able to close out, but losing the series. Yeah, they can win without Embiid because Simmons is that kind of player. And Stephen A., when you talk about he's a jump shot away from being LeBron, right. In other words, he's a jump shot away from being one of the greatest players who ever lived. He does everything else.
Correct.
He has Magic Johnson level court vision and passing. He has better handles than LeBron. He's 6'10". Like when you see the list of guys who can't shoot free throws in the playoffs, they're all 7-footers, and Simmons is he's 6'10". He is a great defender. For my money, the best defender in basketball because he can actually defend at an elite level, 5 positions. So you can absolutely win with him. You can beat this Wizards team with him. Whether or not you can win a championship with him, particularly when this hasn't really been his team, it's been Embiid's team, is a separate question.
Defense. Ben Simmons is special, man, but he is no threat from the perimeter. And because he's no threat from the perimeter, they get to key on some of the Sixers shooters the way the Sixers wish they could key on Atlanta shooters. That's a problem. And they're going to have to figure out how to fix it. I believe they can, but they better start game 2. You ain't coming back from an 0-2 deficit against this Hawks team, in my estimation. Game 2 is the series for the 76ers.
The story was not Trae Young. Props to Trae Young. Because that Luka trade went from, lopsided to not so lopsided anymore. Whoever gets Luka still wins the deal, but Trae Young is making that trade okay, we see you, Atlanta.
Remember, they got a first-round pick with him, too.
Yeah. The issue is not Ben Simmons either. It's not Trae Young or Ben Simmons. The real story to come out of Game 1 is Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers is a story. We were talking earlier about the Clippers. Do you have confidence in Kawhi and Paul George, Stephen A.? Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah. And part of that is because of Ty Lue. Ty Lue, we should get something straight. Ty Lue, I think he's now 4-0 in Game 7s as a coach. Mm-hmm. It's not just that he has the horses. It's that he can really coach. Doc Rivers is going to be a Hall of Fame coach. He's won a championship. I think he's a great coach. However, doesn't mean he's perfect. Everyone has these things in there. Same thing that makes him a great coach. Some of the same things can hold him back. For example, loyalty or being, intractable and stubborn. He does this thing where, so let's take yesterday, for example. First, he puts Danny Green on Trae Young, right? You want to save Ben Simmons for later in the game. Danny Green can defend on ball, but not a dude like Trae Young. So they fall behind. Then he does this thing, which he's been doing all year, Doc Rivers, where he plays an exclusively bench unit at the end of the first and the beginning of the second. That's when they got killed. That's when they got buried. Trae Young, Danny Green on Trae Young, it gave him a little lead, and then the Hawks, and then Doc buried him with this bench unit. Can't do it, right? You're supposed to tighten the rotation in the playoffs. They go 11 deep, and they have some guys who are not playable now, like Shake Milton, and a few other guys. You really shouldn't be playing these dudes. So what happened? They fell behind by so much because Doc stayed with the thing he'd done in the regular season, which you'd think he wouldn't do in the playoffs. And later in the game, he makes some adjustments. Ben Simmons on Trae Young. How'd he do, Stephen A? When you put Thibault and Simmons on Trae Young, suddenly it wasn't like the first half, that's for sure.
Well, they trapped a lot.
And the Sixers caught up. Now, here's the problem. Doc just wasted a performance by Embiid, which on a torn meniscus, you can't ask that dude to do every night. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. So to me, the story is Doc Rivers. Will he be the stubborn old Hall of Fame coach who knows he's going to do it his way, or is he going to look at this and say, I can't do the thing I want to do, I can't do? Because Trae Young just showed you can't do it. Can't do it. Can't play that bench unit. You're going to get buried every game against this Hawks team.
I get where you're coming from. Because I would have never put Danny Green on Trae Young. Too small, too cat quick. That ain't the kind of dude that Danny Green should be defending. But that's not what I'm getting on Danny Green about. 2 for 7 shooting. I need better. Last time we saw Danny Green was in the finals. We were not impressed. There's a reason he's not a member of the Lakers any longer. Okay, they didn't want him. All right, and the reality is that game, that game 5, he didn't get it done. We all know that. They took the Miami Heat out in 6 games. He goes to Philadelphia this year. He's having a pretty decent year. But Danny Green's a veteran. You got to show up for games like this. Especially when you're going up against an Atlanta Hawks squad who's going to score points. They're going to score points. Now, we would sit up there and say, hey, you know what? Let's take Ben Simmons and put him on Trae Young. Ben Simmons probably wants that assignment. But if you watch Trae Young play, forget the scoring. You know what Trae Young would do to Ben Simmons? You know what the first thing he'll do?
Foul trouble.
Give him foul trouble.
Yeah.
All of a sudden he's dribbling and stop and bump into him and then go flopping. And he's such a
That's
miniature.
why Doc held that matchup for later.
He's such a miniature dude. I don't need to do that to him because he will get in foul trouble. Because Trae Young can get anybody in foul trouble, right? But here's the problem. You got to put Ben Simmons on somebody, right? You can't, a guy like Thibault, but if you put him on the court with Ben Simmons at the same time, it's not enough shooting.
But between Simmons and Thibault, you got 48 minutes of defense on that position.
I understand that. But